Hello, I'm Veronica Dudo. A Totowa man has received 15 years in prison for desecrating the remains of a Patterson woman who was killed in his apartment. 32-year-old Justin Fisher was initially indicted for killing the woman, but the murder charge was dropped in February. A Jersey City man was arrested after he was found with a stolen car in the parking lot of a Secaucus Walmart. The vehicle was stolen from New York last week. 40-year-old Brian Gilliam was charged with receiving a stolen motor vehicle. Several students spread wildflower seeds and planted saplings along the Alamucci Township Nature Trail. In addition to providing a more scenic walk along the trail, the trees and flowers will grow to support wildlife with shelter, food, and other resources. Station Manasquan Inlet has announced an open house taking place Saturday, June 1st from noon to 4. The open house includes tours of the station, boat rides, and tips for safe boating. Admission is free and all are welcome.
Good evening, I'm Laura Jones, host of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. In just a few minutes, we will begin the first debate between the candidates for the Democratic nomination for New Jersey's 3rd Congressional District. This race is for the open seat currently held by Congressman Andy Kim, who is running for U.S. Senate. Our debate has 3 of the 5 candidates who are running: Civil Rights Attorney Joe Cohn, Assemblyman Herb Conaway, and Assemblywoman Carol Murphy. The other 2 candidates are Sarah Schoengood and Brian Schieper. The winner of June's primary election will go on to compete in November's general election. This 60-minute debate is presented by On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. The NJEA is the debate sponsor. Our panelists are David Wildstein and Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe and Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. So here's what you can expect in the next hour. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. After that, our panel will ask a series of questions related to national and state issues. And we realize that for any number of the topics covered tonight, we could easily dedicate an entire debate to, but in the interest of covering as many topics as possible, we're going to keep the conversation moving along with our timeline. Respectfully, I ask all candidates to stick to their allotted time. If a candidate goes too long, I'm going to hold up my hand. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to interrupt, and if that doesn't work, brought my bell. Each candidate will have 15 seconds to answer and 45 seconds to answer and 45 seconds to respond. If a candidate is attacked during an answer, his or her opponent will receive an additional 15 seconds to respond. I reserve the option of a follow-up question before moving on. Now, my job is to be the moderator. It's not to take sides, and it's not to give opinion. So I'm going to moderate and keep this debate on course. I'm going to look to each candidate to make sure what their opponent says is based in fact. Each candidate will also have a chance to ask one of their opponents one question. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask their question, and their opponent will have 60 seconds to answer, and the other gets 30 to respond. The candidates then have 90 seconds for a closing statement. So those are the rules. Get ready. New Jersey Debate Night is getting started. Stay with us. Welcome to the first debate between the Democratic candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives from New Jersey's 3rd Congressional District, sponsored by the New Jersey Globe, on New Jersey, and Rider University. This is a race for the open seat of Andy Kim, who is running for U.S. Senate. We have 3 of the 5 candidates who are running this evening: civil rights attorney Joe Cohn, Assemblyman Herb Conaway, and Assemblywoman Carol Murphy. Our panelists this evening are David Wildstein and Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe, and Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Now, after a draw of cards, we have determined that Carol Murphy will go first, Herb Conaway will go second, and Joe Cohn will go third. Now, we've gone over the rules and want to keep in mind our timeline to cover as many topics as possible, so we're going to dive into opening statements. And I can tell that we have lost Ms. Murphy. She was scheduled to go first, so we will come back to her and go on to our second person, who is Herb Conaway. He's standing by for his opening statement. Dr. Conaway, good to have you. You have 90 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Thanks to this body for giving us this opportunity. My name's Herb Conaway. I was born and raised in Burlington County. My dad and my mom raised us, me and my 3 sisters, in Bordentown, and I went on to public school and then off to Princeton and then down to Philadelphia to go to medical school at Jefferson Medical College, and then went into the service right here in McGuire Air Force Base as a captain and the medical corps on the base. I was fortunate to be, after that I went into residency in internal medicine and was fortunate to be elected to the General Assembly in 1997, taking up service in 1998. I've been in leadership for most of that time. I've been chairing the Health Committee and now Deputy Speaker, and have taken on the big tasks here in New Jersey. We have a new funding, I have a funding formula that brought millions of dollars to middle-class districts. I worked on prescription drugs for seniors. I brought Obamacare to New Jersey and increased access to health care. This election, probably the most important in anyone's lifetime, for the first time we have a major party candidate who has said he'll be a dictator and will go after our cherished public institutions. And we have seen, regrettably, that women's rights are under attack here in this country. I have been fighting for reproductive freedom. I'm a practicing physician. I know what happens in the exam room, the tough decisions that need to be made. I've delivered cancer diagnoses. I've talked to women about their reproductive rights and their health care. I know politicians have no business being in the examination room. I ask for your consideration tonight. This is a historic election for me personally. If elected, I'll be the first Black physician to serve in the Congress in the nation, and I'll be the first African American to represent male to represent South Jersey in the Congress. So I look forward to your questions, and once again, thanks for this forum.
Our next candidate, Joe Cohn, for his opening statement while we still work on those technical issues for Ms. Murphy. Joe Cohn, your opening statement. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I'm Joe Cohn. I'm not a politician. I'm a civil rights attorney. Living in southern New Jersey for the last 16 years, and from my small farm in Lumberton for the last 10, I've advocated for civil rights in almost all 50 state legislatures and in Congress. During my 20 years as a lawyer for nonprofits like the AIDS Law Project, the ACLU, and the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, I've won on issues that matter to Democrats in legislatures that are blue, purple, and even dark red. For example, last year, I led a successful campaign against a DeSantis-backed bill in Florida that would have rolled back free press rights. I'm running because Congress desperately needs people with my civil rights background and my experience building winning coalitions. We simply cannot afford to let the polarization continue because it, and a certain former president, have placed our democracy in real danger, and our civil liberties, like the right to choose, on the chopping block. To defend our democracy and our rights, we must restore faith in government. It starts by having a Congress laser focused on solving our problems, rather than exclusively waging culture wars that drive us apart. I'll prioritize ensuring all Americans have quality, affordable health care, saving Social Security, getting the wealthiest among us to pay their fair share so we can fund universal pre-K, addressing the border, fighting climate change, and reestablishing a federal right to reproductive freedom. I want to thank tonight's sponsors, Laura, Micah, and Joey, for moderating tonight, and my opponents for sharing the stage with me too. I hope to earn your vote on June 4th. Thank you again.
Carol Murphy, we have our technical issues ironed out.
Yep.
Over to you for your opening statement.
Thank you and good evening. First, I want to thank the New Jersey Globe and C-SPAN for hosting this debate, and those
Okay, we're still having some technical issues with Carol Murphy. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to our panelists for their questions. And once we work that out, we will make sure that she gets her time to make her statement. So if a panel, you are ready, David Wildstein, you're going to be up first. You have a question for Mr. Cohn.
Yes, Mr. Cohn, you're seeking to replace Andy Kim as the member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 3rd District of New Jersey. I know you know him well. I know you respect him. What positions have you taken, or has he taken, that you would seek to emulate as his successor? And are there any votes that he's cast or positions he's taken where you don't share that view and would do something differently?
Thank you for that question. Andy Kim has, big shoes to fill because he's been a fantastic representative for us here in the 3rd Congressional District. What I share most in common with him is our shared commitment to trying to do everything we can to build bipartisan support, bring us closer together on issues that matter to all people. So I admire him a tremendous, great deal. I thought he did the right thing in voting to approve of the aid to Taiwan, Israel, and the Ukraine while casting the no vote on the bill to ban TikTok. I'd share, the same voting record on that. I don't know where he would stand on other civil liberties issues that I would advance. So I'm a big proponent of criminal justice reform. I'm obviously a big supporter of free speech protections, and I thank you for that question.
Okay, and we're going to go Mr. Conaway. Dr. Conaway, you have 45 seconds for your response.
Well, thank you for that question. Andy Kim has been my representative now for almost 6 years. I voted for him every time, certainly, and campaigned for him. And I can't say that I know everything that he has done. I have my own legislative work to do, and work for the people here in the 7th District that I represent. But I know I support him, and I know, most importantly, as I run for office, meeting people at the door, answering the phone, meeting people in small groups, that they are gaga for Andy. And I'm gaga for Andy as well. I think he's been doing a fantastic job. His outreach and constituent service has been fantastic. I can't think of anything off the top of my head with which I disagree, except maybe on the TikTok vote, and that I think, and I was listening to a program just recently, and there's I think a very well taken concern about China's involvement in TikTok. I want to keep TikTok in, I want China out.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Do we have Carol Murphy? We do have Carol Murphy. You have 45 seconds to respond. I'm not sure. Did you hear the question? If not, I can have David repeat it. You did not?
No.
David, do you want to repeat it, or shall I?
No, I can repeat it. The question was, you're seeking to replace Andy Kim in Congress. What positions has he taken that you would like to continue if you're his successor? And are there any votes he's taken since joining the Congress that you would have voted differently?
Sure. Thank you for that. So first, I will like to say it would be an honor to replace Andy Kim in Congress and work with him as he moves up into the Senate. I can start off by telling you the anti-Semitic bill, I would have voted for that bill. I would have also continue moving forward and work with our congressional delegation to make sure to see that through. One thing that I do agree on is the fact that we have to sell TikTok and ban it from U.S. And China should sell that. And look, we have to protect our children, and we have to continue with Andy Kim. I know he is a big, huge advocate of reproductive rights. So that's one thing that we will continue working together on.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to our next question. Micah Rasmussen, you have a question which will go to Dr. Conaway.
Assemblyman, you are a public health official and a physician. What is your position on sponsoring universal health care in the House? And what do we need to do as far as a national policy on nursing staff levels and issues that we're having?
Well, thank you for that question. If universal health care means, as you've put it, a single payer health plan, then I don't support that. I don't think the American people are ready for a government-run healthcare system. You just looked at Canada and places in Europe, particularly England. Every time the government runs into an issue, they cut healthcare. We're dealing with Medicare cuts now that could imperil Medicare itself. And now you want the government, the federal government, to control the entire healthcare system. I don't think that people want that, and I don't support that. Now, if your question means, can we do everything we can to advance more people into acquiring health insurance, I think that's very important. I've done that here in New Jersey. I'm the sponsor of Obamacare in New Jersey. Expanding healthcare access means improving the healthcare status of our citizens. I'm all for that. I'm for allowing those who are perhaps gappers, I might call them. They've worked, had insurance, and now they're waiting for Medicare for them to buy into the Medicare program. I think that's important. And all of the other state innovations that go to expanding health access, I'm for helping that in the federal level, at the federal level. Thank you.
Okay, next response goes to Ms. Murphy.
Thank you. So, first of all, I want to say that healthcare is a human right. It is not a privilege, it's a human right. And protecting Medicare and moving toward a universal health care is extremely important, not only for me, but for those in New Jersey. And I strongly stand with my safe staffing folks and ratios to protect nurses and patients and doctors in hospitals to assure that we have a balanced staff that will be able to provide access to health care.
Okay, and our next response, Mr. Cohn.
Well, first, I think it's important to get as many people insured as we can because health should not be determined by one's wealth. What I would do is I would make sure that Medicare was an option available to all. So not the only option, but I would eliminate the age restriction so that anyone can choose to be on Medicare. The next thing that I think we need to do is make sure that we control the cost of prescription drugs. We need to have a permanent formula for what will get a drug on the list of those that can be negotiated for the price. And with respect to nursing levels, I think we need to continue to provide student loan relief for those who go into nursing. And we need to do everything that we can to encourage, better wages for those going into the nursing profession, because whether it's nursing or long-term care, we have a problem when we can't attract people to those jobs.
Okay, our next question comes from Micah, and your question is going to Assemblywoman Murphy.
You keep an active legislative agenda, which is more than can be said of the current House of Representatives. What's the appeal of joining a body that members are retiring from in droves and frustration? Why do you think you can better serve the district and the region in the House than you can in the Assembly?
Well, you know what? Thank you for that, Micah. I do a very good job serving in the Assembly, and I do keep an active schedule, and that's what makes me proactive. That's what makes me effective, is keep moving and keep involving, investing in what we do, not only in legislation, but also in my constituency and the people of New Jersey. Because once we start investing and working together and going into DC to be able to continue moving us forward is a huge, huge responsibility that I take very seriously. And as I go into DC, I can tell you right now, I will bring the same tenacity that I bring to Trenton, and that is continuously working to make sure that we follow our constituents have a way to stay in New Jersey and the affordability is still here.
Mr. Cohn, your response.
Well, the real reason why I want to join Congress is because Congress desperately needs people who can bring people together. We're having a real serious national security threat in our country from our polarization. It's tearing us apart at every level. And we need people with the skill set and the determination to stop treating governance like an us versus them contest where we're just trying to dunk on our political opponents. And I've spent the last 20 years of my career in legislatures across the country trying to bring people together to make real progress. And I've had success even where Republicans have the power and the control. And right now, that's what we need more than anything, is people who are going to be able to navigate that situation.
Herb Conaway, you have 45 seconds.
Thanks. Well, I'm running because I love my country. My country has given me a lot, and I want to serve it. I already served in the military. I raised my hand in defense of my nation, and I'm prepared to raise my hand to go to work for the nation once again. You're right and so I know I'm only one person, but my approach has been to speak to the mind, to calm a situation, and to look for common ground. We have much more in our country that we agree on, a great deal of commonality. And I know I'm one person, but if there are enough people who focus on what's important for the American people and what's in the American people's interest, then we'll have a Congress that functions the way it should. As a doctor, I do science-based, fact-based policy. That's how I've done my governing here in New Jersey, and I'll take that same zeal to the Congress if I'm favored with the election to that body.
Joey Fox, you are up next with a question going to Joe Cohn.
Yeah, so I think looming over any election in South Jersey, including this one, is George Norcross, the Democratic power broker who holds immense sway over South Jersey Democratic politics. In your opinion, has Mr. Norcross been a force for good in South Jersey?
Well, listen, I don't know Mr. Norcross. What I will say is we can't continue to have politics go through any one person of any, no matter who they are. We need to be in a situation where the voters and the voters alone determine who our leaders are. And that's why I was proud to, be an amicus on the lawsuit to challenge the line. That's why I invited my opponents before the Burlington County Convention to join me in a statement saying that our race should be handled on an even level with block voting ballots. Neither one of them replied. And that's why I think that we need to get back to the basics of the grassroots work that brings all of us together.
Okay, Carol Murphy, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. One of the things that I could say is that being a part of Burlington County, while I'm part of South Jersey and I work very to support South Jersey and assure that we get our fair share, I can tell you I'm very independent from the Democratic in Camden County. It serves me well, and it gives me the ability to continue being independent for my constituent. But I can tell you this, as a member of South Jersey delegation, we have worked to pass many good bills for everyone in the state of New Jersey, including pay equity, reproductive rights. Those are just a few of the things that we have done as a South Jersey delegation. And I stand with them.
Okay, we're going to go to Herb Conaway. You have 45 seconds to respond.
Sure that
I think the question again was, I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Yeah, Joey, would you like me to repeat it, or do you have it?
I'll quickly repeat it. Just in your opinion, has George Norcross been a force for good in South Jersey?
Well, George Norcross has, as the head of a thriving business, he has been the driving force behind the expansion of Cooper University Hospital, which has been a driving force in providing health care for the underserved, not only in Camden City, but across the region. And so he has been a force for good. And I think the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, Joey, we're going to go back to you now. Back to you now with a question for Assemblyman Herb Conaway.
So one thing that Assemblywoman Murphy noted is that the South Jersey Democratic Legislative Delegation has passed a lot of bills. One thing that recently passed the legislature, something that all three of you opposed, was a bill that significantly hobbles the state's Open Public Records Act. So I'm not going to ask whether you oppose it, because I know that all three of you were very publicly against it. But do you think that there should be any consequences for the legislators, especially the South Jersey legislators who did support it?
Well, look, the voters are always in the driver's seat and can always decide. I'll leave that to them. The people who took their votes, I'm sure they took their votes based on the evidence and the facts that were presented to them, and I hope looking to the needs of their constituents. I can only say for myself is that I listened to what my constituents said with respect to that bill, and it was overwhelming that my constituents wanted a no vote on that bill. And while anything we do in the government can be reformed, this particular vehicle was not, at least insofar as my constituents are concerned, not a vehicle and not the kind of reform they wanted. And so I'll let the voters across the state make pass judgment on all of us, on all elected officials, as they should, which is their right in this country.
Okay, Joe Cohn, over to you. Joe Cohn.
I agree with Assemblyman Conaway that the voters are ultimately going to have their say, and I predict that they'll be really unhappy with the members of the legislature who voted to roll back protections of Oprah. You can't have democracy function well without real meaningful transparency, and you don't get meaningful transparency when there aren't accessible ways for people to get to court when requests are improperly denied. The bill was a serious problem. The polling on it shows that voters are angry. And, I think that there's going to be a lot of accountability for that vote. It's a shame. It didn't have to be that way. And hopefully the governor will veto the bill.
Carol Murphy, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Add a little bit of a different spin to, while we do have to protect our transparency in our documents, the consequences that we're going to see, not necessarily with those who voted for the bill, because you know what? For pure respect for all of my colleagues, they have a right to vote the way they feel is important for their district, and they feel that works for their district. Where the consequences is going to come is not just this bill, but in many other bills that we're going to see over time, whether it works or not. Those are going to be the consequences. It's not going to be just because we voted yes or no on the bill. It's going to be, how does this bill stand up to the test of time moving forward? And as a person who has done Oprah in the past, I can tell you that that's where the true consequence is going to come, whether it works or not work.
Okay, David Wildstein, we're going to go back over to you, and you have a question for Carol Murphy.
So clean energy policies depend on the ability to mine essential materials like cobalt and graphite and lithium. So my question is, what restrictions should be placed on the supply chain to the United States on cobalt for electric car batteries? In some cases, they come from forced child and adult labor in the Congo, or from ocean floor mining. I think they call it seabed mining. They could potentially disrupt aquatic life and the ecosystem that is still being discovered.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I take great pride in is the fact that I have been a strong supporter and champion for clean energy, clean water, and our electric vehicles, and making sure that offshore wind plays a part in our environmental structure, especially during this bad time of climate change, which is now a crisis in the United States. For one thing, we should never have slave and child labor. That is a no. We should never have that, nor should we have ocean floor mining. We are able to accomplish the things that we need to do, especially during climate change, making sure that we have offshore wind. We make sure we have clean water. We make sure we have clean air. It's a right for people to have these clean air and clean water. And as we move forward, again, I'm going to restate, we should not have slave or child labor in any of this.
Assemblyman Herb Conaway, to you for your response.
Well, I talked about restrictions on vital resources that will power our climate future. I certainly, those things need to be taken on a case-by-case basis. And we know that innovation is continuing in this space. We're moving from liquid-based batteries. There's some new discoveries on solid-state batteries for cars that will change the mix of materials that might be vital for that. But we need this for our energy independence and for delivering a climate that's healthy for the environment going forward. Of course, no one is for child labor. No one, and we have laws on this. We need to respect tribal lands. We need to respect our natural resources. We have plenty of laws in the books, but understand this: we're going to innovate our way to an economy that's clean and healthy for our environment and for the world. It's an important responsibility of elected officials to look to the future. I've been a leader on this. That's unquestioned, and I'll continue that leadership if I'm elected to Congress.
Joe Cohn, you have 45 seconds.
Well, if we're going to get rid of child labor and slave labor, we need to provide the incentives for those that are using those labor sources to eliminate them. And that might require the painful act from us of paying higher prices for some of these materials until the innovations that Assemblyman Conaway mentioned are real and can be used. We have the responsibility to workers to be using the carrot in order to encourage the conditions to be better for them. But we also need to have energy policy that diversifies our energy sources and uses as many clean energies as possible. That's why I've developed a plan to use and put solar panels on every suitable square space of federal buildings and federal parking lots, and block grants for state governments to do the same.
Micah Rasmussen, you are up next, and your question will go to Mr. Cohn.
This is a question for Farmer Cohn. The Farm Bill is still a very big deal in Congress every year. How important is it to bolster what's left of this district's agricultural heritage? And how do you do that in Congress with so much development pressure all around us?
Well, I live in a part of the district that is a rural street only 5 minutes away from a suburban area. And of course, we're just a half an hour away from Philadelphia. We have to make sure that we keep our open spaces open and we preserve as much as possible. And I'll be a voice that's fighting in Congress to make sure that those in the agricultural world aren't left behind. You know, you see the bumper stickers all of the time, no farms, no food, and it's true. So my view is that it's a bill worth fighting for because, you know, we can't get the open spaces back once we've developed on them.
Okay, the next response goes to Herb Conaway.
Well, you're right. This is an agricultural. There are many agricultural spaces across this district. I served on the Assembly Agriculture Committee for 10, 12 years and dealt with these issues. I've sponsored a number of pieces of legislation to preserve open space. That's certainly a critical part of what we need to do in a highly urbanized, densely populated area such as New Jersey. But we have a great farming economy, and the government needs to recognize that and to support that. And if that means certainly protecting access to water, protecting those spaces from overdevelopment, developing farm markets and a farm economy, preserving open space, but we have to remember to preserve the farmer. And that means where that farmer is, we need to make sure that they can use every bit of that land they can to maintain themselves while they're maintaining the farms, and make sure that there's a pathway for their family to move in and take those farms over, which we see across the country. So I recognize that we live in a great place. We have urban, suburban, and farming communities, and they all need our support.
Kara Murphy, over to you. 45 seconds.
Thank you. You know what? Our farming community is extremely important to our economy. It is a key part of our economy, which includes farm conservation, farm loans to start expansion of our farms. Also, investment in our farms and protect our food supply. All of these fall under that bill that has a right to farm. And that is what we have to constantly remember, that if we do not have fresh fruit, fresh vegetables in our grocery stores and on our food stands, we're not serving our residents well. And in Congress, I can tell you, I will continue at being an advocate, a strong voice for my farmers here in Burlington County, Monmouth, and Mercer County.
David Wildstein, you're up next, and your question will go first to Herb Conaway.
Thanks. Assemblyman, with protests over the war in Israel, Gaza, taking over college campuses across the country and in New Jersey. How can the First Amendment rights of students be balanced with security and academic concerns and the reputational concerns of the higher education institution?
Well, let's start with first principles. And you mentioned those concerns, and you're absolutely right. We live in a free country with a constitution that says that people have a right to free speech and to express themselves by protest, organizing themselves to advance policies in the government, and that needs protection. There also is a right of students to go to school in an environment that's safe and to be free from the regrettable rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate speech on campuses, not only just on campuses, by the way, across the country, that's, in my opinion, been spurred by one person. His name is Donald Trump. One way to deal with these very tense situations, and they're all fact-based, and what we've seen is that when administrations go and try to understand where people are coming from. Bill Bradley in his book referenced his grandmother, and what she said was, don't look down on someone you don't understand. And I think administrations need to understand where people are coming from and work to ease tensions and to find a pathway to allow both peaceful protest while dealing with those who choose to transgress the law and interfere with access of students to the education they need, to the facilities they need for their growth and development.
Carol Murphy, you're next.
Thank you. You know what? First of all, free speech is part of the First Amendment right, free speech. And our protesters are definitely using their voice for free speech. One of the things that free speech should also be is not violence. It should not incur violence. We should not allow agitators to come onto the campus to continue bringing chaos and violence to these protesters. I also believe that our campuses, and when we come to education, everyone has a right to an education. Everyone has a right to be there, whether they agree with protesters or not. And I do believe that there should be a way to be able to live together when there are protests going on that are within our realms of nonviolent, and being able to use our voice to get a message across, not just to create chaos and violence. So with that, I will, my time's up.
And I didn't even have to use my bell. Joe Cohn, you're next.
It's very nice to get a question on my area of expertise. So I've dedicated the last 12 years of my career fighting for the rights of students and faculty on college campuses. And let me make one thing perfectly clear. The First Amendment never protects violence, and schools need to draw that very bright line. It doesn't protect vandalism either. Property destruction, isn't protected at all under the First Amendment. But campus administrators should be allowing as much speech as they possibly can, because people don't have a right to go to schools without being uncomfortable. They have a right to go to schools without being harassed, without being discriminated against. There have been instances where students have crossed those lines, engaged in true threats, acts of incitement. They've been occupying buildings they don't have the right to occupy. Schools need to make sure that they balance those rights. And
okay, we're gonna have to stop you there. Time is up on that one. I apologize.
Thank you.
Joey Fox, you are up next with a question for Carol Murphy.
Congress itself, of course, has a lot of say over Israel-Palestine policy. This week, the House is set to vote on a bill that would override a Biden administration decision to pause an arms shipment to Israel over humanitarian concerns. If you were in the House, would you support that bill?
To override the administration of the president, that's a difficult question because I don't even know what's in the bill. But I can tell you this: it's never in my former practice to override any president's decision on what is happening on foreign policy, especially with a president who has so much experience in foreign policy, to assure that we are able to continue moving our country and protecting our allies. And I would probably be in a position where I would not be voting for that bill.
Okay, over to Joe Cohn next.
So I'm Jewish. I support Israel's right to defend itself. I think it's absolutely crucial for the United States to back Israel and to provide it, timely support, including timely weapons. I don't have a problem with the Biden administration withholding a particular weapon if they think it's inappropriate for a particular mission because of the amount of damage that it would cause, provided they are providing other weapons that they think are, more appropriate for that purpose. I don't know enough about what's being withheld and what's being offered to say how I would vote on the bill, but that's how I would analyze the question.
Okay, and over to Herb Conaway for your response.
Well, look, as a doctor, I am focused on preserving life. But let's go back to first principles. Since I was in high school, I've been a supporter of United States involvement in Israel for cultural and strategic reasons. The United States needs to be a guarantor of Israeli security. And of course, the Israelis have a right to defend themselves. And let's remember, it was Hamas who attacked the Jewish state, who attacked the Jewish people, as the president has reminded us. And so, as a physician, though, I want to see people. We need to have a break in the action so that we can move people to safety, food, water, shelter, and we need a pathway for hostages to be freed. And so I don't know all the facts the president does. I would join with others in getting those facts, asking for a briefing so they can understand what the president knows that we don't know, and then make a decision accordingly.
Next up, David Wildstein, and a question for Mr. Cohn.
So members of Congress from the 3rd District, from both parties for decades, have made sure they secured seats on the House Armed Services Committee. That is to protect a major contributor to South Jersey's economy, the Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. Will you commit right now to seeking an assignment on the House Armed Services Committee to protect that interest for your district?
Absolutely. I hope that helped save us some time.
If that's all you have to say on it, then we will go on to Carol Murphy for her response. That was short and to the point, making up for time. Ms. Murphy.
Well, thank you. Like Joe, absolutely. That is on my committee list to pick up. I presently now, as an Assemblywoman and a daughter of a U.S. Army Master Sergeant, I can tell you that I already work on the Joint Base now with many of my the base commanders and many of the other folks that do work on there. We also, as we move forward with the military armed services, I've also made that same very commitment to many of the folks who are on the Burlington County Military Affairs Committee, which I am a lifetime member of, to continue working with them on many of the military issues that we have going on, not only here in New Jersey, but because our base is one of the biggest ones we have also throughout the nation.
Okay, we're going to go to Herb Conaway for his response. And we hear that there is some feedback. We know we're getting it, and we are working to address that. So the audience and also those participating in the debate know we are aware of that. Herb Conaway, to you.
Well, yes, I've served there, and I have treated on the base and in my practice a number of people who are a part of the veterans community. I'm a member of a veterans organization. I know how important these bases are to our veterans and to our national security, and I'll follow in Andy's footsteps and serve on the, I would seek to serve on the Armed Forces Committee. Hopefully they'll allow me to do so in the General Assembly. I serve on the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee and have sponsored a number of pieces of legislation into law that make things life better for our military families and respects the service that our veterans have provided to our country.
Okay, Micah Rasmussen, you are up next. You have a question for Dr. Herb Conaway. Take it away.
Yes. You voted with South Jersey Democrats in support of Governor Chris Christie's proposals to increase the contributions of public employees, including teachers and first responders, as well as their health care benefits and pensions. Indeed, when Steve Sweeney collaborated with Chris Christie, you were there in support of those measures. Were you an enabler of some of Christie's most memorable legislative priorities, and do you regret that?
I took on Chris Christie in contradistinction to what you have said. When he tried to cut Planned Parenthood, I led the fight to override that veto. When he tried to cut health care for people in general, particularly women who were seeking cancer care, I fought against the administration's attempts there. I don't look. Even a clock is right twice a day, and I'm not saying he's right on this issue. But to say that I was an enabler of the Christie administration, I have fought against the administration on some very important things that are critical, particularly to women in this state. As a physician, as I've said, I understand that healthcare is about the relationship between the patient and her healthcare provider, her physician, and her family. And I've fought for that in New Jersey, and I'll continue to fight for that if I'm favored with election to Congress.
Okay, Joe Cohn, we're going to let you chime in on that.
Well, I don't think that that collaboration is always a dirty word, but it should never be at the expense of workers. So, we need to make sure that, moving forward, that pensions are protected fully, that no matter what we are doing in collaboration with people we disagree with, that we stay true to our principles of making sure that we're fighting constantly for working class people to have what they need, to have affordability of the things that they need for their lives. We need to make sure that the richest amongst us are paying their fair share, and that will be my focus moving forward. But I'll work with anyone to make that happen.
Carol Murphy, over to you.
Thank you. You know what? I'm going to answer that question directly. I can tell you one thing. When that all went down, I was working with Senator Greenstein as her chief of staff. And I can tell you, I stood with her out in the streets on Trenton when they had the big bulletin board and they had the microphones and all of that, talking about how Chapter 78 is going to hurt our teachers. It's going to hurt our schools. And I stood with her in protest of making sure that that bill didn't go through. Unfortunately, it did. But Linda Greenstein, myself, who's a senator, right now she was in Monmouth County and parts of Mercer. We stood together fighting that with the NJEA. And I couldn't have had a better, prouder moment of myself being able to do that.
Okay, time has come now to let our candidates ask a question of one of their opponents. Now you each have 30 seconds to ask a question, 1 minute answer, and a 30-second response. Again, one question to one opponent. We're starting with Ms. Murphy. You are first.
Thank you. Assemblyman Conaway, you have criticized me for campaigning on identity politics. You stated in the Pine Barrens Tribune, another distinction between me and my chief opponent is my refusal to run on identity politics. Do you mean talking about women's issue as a woman is identity politics? And can you explain by what you meant by identity politics, please?
What I meant was that, and say that one's sex or one's race should not be the principal driver of a campaign. I mean, it's as simple as that. And, I am a person of color who represents a majority white district, and I have governed in a way that irrespective of sex or race or gender or any other distinction that one might have. And so I meant nothing more than that.
Okay, Carol Murphy, you have 30 seconds to respond now.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? My experience as a woman is relevant. And thinking otherwise is why we never have elected a woman into Congress from South Jersey. And anyone, and Assemblyman, if you think that women's issues and representations are just identity politics, then how can women trust you to protect our rights? This isn't trivial. Our rights are being taken away, and I will not stop talking about women's rights.
I'm all for women's rights. I keep talking about women's rights. That's just fine as far as I'm concerned. I've been there, and I've done that. And I've done that in my practice life as well as my life as an elected official. And I stand second to no one in my defense of equal rights, particularly for women. If I'm elected to Congress, we'll put a row into the law. We're going to fight IVF. I know IVF because I dealt with that in my family. And so, I stand second to none in my support for women's rights and equal rights, and certainly protecting rights from this attack on their ability to live freely and make their own decisions.
Herb Conaway, you are next now with a question for your opponent.
Ms. Murphy, you announced that you were running for Congress before you got reelected to the Assembly, and you announced that you were supporting Andy Kim and his quest to take a seat in the Senate or run for the Senate. And then when the going got tough in the election, you changed your position. And so I think people are going to want to know when you stand up and say, "I will do such and thus," that you're going to actually follow through and do that. So can the people count on you to stand and dig in for the things that you say you'll do? Or are you going to flip-flop when it's politically convenient for you to do so?
So please, not to interrupt, and I'm sorry, but I thought that the next question would be Assemblyman Conaway to Joe Cohn. Joe Cohn is an integral part of our candidacy as well. He is a member of our campaigns, and Andy has always supported Andy Kim. I think the next question, if I'm not mistaken, according to the rules, we're supposed to go to Joe Cohn. Please clarify for us if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, Assemblyman, do you have a question for Joe Cohn?
That was my understanding of the rules.
Yeah. Do you have a question for Joe Cohn?
It's not my understanding of the rule. I asked a question and according to your format, and so
okay.
I don't have a question for Joe.
Okay. Ms. Murphy, did you have anything else that you'd like to say? I'll let you have another 30 seconds to respond.
So you know what? I've always supported Andy Kim. And you know what? When it came to this line, I had a meeting with Andy Kim back in December. We had breakfast. We had breakfast in January talking about the idea of making everyone on the same line, making it possible for the voices to be heard of every single Democrat. I've never flip-flopped on my support for Andy Kim. Matter of fact, at every single convention, I went up to him and told him that I truly support him. So to be able to talk about flip-flopping is inaccurate, Assemblyman. I do support Andy Kim. I've always supported Andy Kim, and I voted for Andy Kim.
Okay, we're
Read the Globe. Read the Globe. It's right there in print.
All right, now we're going to move on to Joe Cohn. You have the next question to Carol Murphy.
Assemblywoman Murphy, under my plan to help the next generation save for retirement, parents of children age 1 to 5 would be able to purchase a U.S. bond for up to $1,000 each year that would mature when the child turns 67, at which point it would be worth $248,000 per parent. The parents would get a dollar-for-dollar credit on their taxes. I'd let grandparents do the same and let employers match for a deduction. What's your plan to help the next generation save for retirement?
So you know what? I have been a strong advocate for our pensions, preserving our Social Security, and making sure that we focus on childcare and tax credits while we support our children and the growth that they need. Our children are our investment in the next generation. And as we move forward, I can only imagine what it's going to be like if our Social Security is cut. And I just read an article and received information that if Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to cut out Social Security. That does not help our future leaders, our future adults. And we have to focus on them today in order to preserve tomorrow, because our future is uncertain if we don't worry about that. And our pensions and our Social Security and all of them are an essential part of our children's growth in our society.
Before we go to our last round of questions, Joe Cohn, you have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Yeah, I just think that there's more that we can do. I mean, we need to make Social Security solvent. It's absolutely crucial because, we're going to run out of the surplus by 2036, and we need to take action to fix that now by raising the cap so that people who earn more income still are contributing more into the system. But we need to do more than that because Social Security doesn't cover enough for people to have real meaningful retirement. And that's why I've been thinking about how we can address it better and leverage time to get money in people's hands so that compounding interest can work for them.
All right, I think we have time for about 2 more questions, so we're going to go to Micah Rasmussen. Next question for Joe Cohn.
You've identified protecting the pinelands as a priority, which is in keeping with the landmark protections that Jim Florio first established from the House. But what are some ways that a federal lawmaker can advance pinelands protections today? And what are the needs of the pinelands today that the House can advance?
Well, I think that one of the things that we need to do to preserve the pinelands is to make sure that the federal government is giving enough money to environmental protection agencies to enforce rules. We need to make sure that we give block grants for municipalities to be able to purchase more lands that are open space now for preservation, because that's absolutely, critically important. And we need to work with all of the local nonprofits like the Pineland Preservation Alliance and others to hear and heed their advice, because they're really plugged in on a day-to-day basis on what the individual needs are, from, whether it is deciding whether or not you're going to be doing building in Pemberton or other projects in other parts of the Pinelands. We need to prioritize making sure from Congress that our EPA is ready to do enforcement and has the resources, and municipalities have the money to be able to turn away development projects.
Herb Conaway, you're next.
Well, when I was in high school, I actually ran on the Pinelands Preservation when I was elected Boy State Governor at 17. And so I am all about preserving that environment. Now, what the federal government can do, we have to continue to wage the battle on climate. New Jersey is one of the 6th hottest states in the nation, and we are surrounded by an ocean on one side and a river on the other. And so we need to drive our climate policy to lower the temperature and keep the saltwater intrusion from damaging the aquifer that lies underneath the pinelands. I've led on this issue on infrastructure for climate change. And by the way, leading on infrastructure for climate change and addressing it creates jobs. And creating jobs for middle-class families lifts all boats. So getting after climate, building the infrastructure, putting people to work, that's one way. In addition to all the other things that Joe mentioned, and I agree with what he has said, will help preserve that important natural resource for New Jersey.
Carol Murphy, you're next.
I'm a strong supporter of our pinelands. A few years ago, when we had major fires down in the pinelands, I went with the Agricultural Committee to tour the pinelands. And I could tell you, one of the things that I think we need to also focus on is stronger forestry. We have to assure that our foresters and those who are working and our park police, et cetera, are able to continue keeping our pinelands strong. We need our pinelands continue to protect clean air and clean water. And it's also important. It's also important for our ecosystem, right? I mean, and it makes not only South Jersey, but it also makes New Jersey a great place to live, because we do have those pinelands for people to go and actually have some recreations, camping. And if we don't have strong pinelands, if we don't have strong foresters, and we don't have strong rules and regulations that protect our climate and our forests and our woods, we will not be successful as New Jersey in the pinelands.
We have time for one more question. Joey Fox, you were up with a question for Herb Conaway.
Haven't mentioned tonight, or at least we as moderators have not mentioned LGBT rights, abortion, gun control, marijuana. These are all obviously very important topics. They're all also topics that I think the three of you would largely agree on most key aspects. So my question for you is, if you're elected to this very bitterly divided, currently Republican-controlled Congress, or Republican-controlled House, what would you do to go about implementing your preferred policies on a lot of these really contentious issues?
Well, you have to, as Joe pointed out, you have to know how to deal with people who disagree with you. I am a person, I hope on my tombstone, whenever that comes up many years from now, they put, here, lies the voice of reason. I think you can reason with people, make an argument, but fight for the things you believe in, not flip-flop on them. I have been right on these issues, marriage equality. We're looking to build a data set into our health data acquisition so that we can understand what's happening with the LGBT community. I fought some of the issues around smoking, where big tobacco is targeting vulnerable groups. And so I've led on that, and I can lead in the Congress. My experience will inform my steps in the Congress. You work with people, you're reasonable with them, you try to understand where they're coming from, look for common ground and commonality and common values, and you can get things done. And that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'll do if I'm elected to Congress.
Carol Murphy.
Thank you. You know what? First of all, I can tell you, in order to make any type of policy work and strengthen it, you have to have the investment of those folks with whom it impacts directly. And that's what I believe in. That's how I directly come about making my policy, is speaking with those that it directly impacts. Not only that, but as a part of the National Conference for State Legislators that I sat on in the executive committee, as well as a co-chair with a Republican senator from Montana, we did talk on the national, state, and federal policy. We talked about issues and how to resolve them in Washington, and talk about those issues that impact all of my folks, not just one class over another. And you know what? I've worked to get legislation passed in red, purple, and blue states through both of these organizations, as well as the National Foundation for Women Legislators. And I can tell you,
your time
Thank
is
you.
up. Joe Cohn. Joe Cohn, final thoughts. 45
Thank you
seconds.
for that. Thank you for that question. I've been working on civil liberties for my whole career, and even before my career as a teenager, I was fighting for gay marriage. If we're going to make progress on these challenging issues, we need to build a coalition of the reasonable that comes from treating people with respect and talking with them and being patient with them. And I've had success doing that, especially in states that were deep red where you wouldn't expect it. And what I mean by that is I've had instances where I've talked to legislators who are on the wrong side of issues, on the wrong side of campus censorship, who later on became my bill sponsors because I talked and listened and treated them with dignity rather than just pointing the finger at them. One of them was the Republican chair of Wisconsin's College and University Committee. And subsequently, he introduced the only bill, to the best of my knowledge, sponsored by a Republican to give gender identity protections from harassment.
All right, and we're going to have to end it. We're going to have to end it there with our question and answer. It's time now to go to closing statements. We'll start with Carol Murphy, then to Herb Conaway, then to Joe Cohn. So
thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you, David, Laura, Joey, and Micah. And thank you, Joe and Herb, for joining me here tonight. I want to close by making a point that I think is important and can sometimes be lost in these situations. The truth is, we cannot get swept up in the politics of this primary. Honestly, my greatest concern is taking on Trump extremists lining up to take Andy Kim's congressional seat. That's what is actually at stake here, and we cannot afford to forget it. We're talking about people who believe women are second-class citizens, people who believe in Trump's mission to overturn free and fair elections, people who want to eliminate Social Security, Medicare, and deny people right to a living wage. Look, the reality is that we cannot send one more Marjorie Taylor Greene or Laura Boebert or even Jeff Van Drew to Congress. And most of all, we cannot allow Donald Trump to be reelected president of these United States. What is at stake in this election is literally the future of democracy and our republic. We may have debated here tonight, but we are not actually enemies. We are united in a common purpose, and we are all fighters in the Trump resistance army. There's nothing more sacred in our democracy than the choice before you, and I humbly ask for your vote and promise to make you proud as your Congresswoman. Thank you.
Herb Conaway, you have 90 seconds for closing statements.
Yes, and thank you to the organizers of this debate, and thank you to my colleagues for joining in this discussion. Look, I am, by way of background, once again, I'm the best person to serve this district. My record in public life, my record in my private life of accomplishment puts me in the best position to preserve this seat for the Democrats, which is critical. I've raised my hand in service of my country in the military. I have been a leader in the General Assembly, working on the issues that are important to people. I fought to preserve seniors' income from taxation. I fought to make sure that they can stay in their homes and keep their family together by providing property tax relief. I fought for prescription drug access to senior citizens. I fought for voting rights. You know, every bill that's come to that legislature, I've either sponsored and certainly voted for all of it. I'm the sponsor of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act in the Assembly, and I'll take that same fight to the Congress if I'm elected to that body. I have fought for reproductive freedom and rights for women. I'm a physician. I do this for a living. I am engaged in the hard discussions with people about a cancer diagnosis or about what to do about reproductive rights. And I understand just how important it is that politicians stay out of the exam room, that the doctor-patient relation is sacrosanct. If I go to Congress, if you send me there, I'll make the law of the land, fight for access to IVF, and fight for access to needed contraception, things I've already done here at the state level. I'm proud to be one of the most effective legislators in the body. I passed over 300 bills. If you elect me to the Congress, I promise I won't let you down. I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to go on day one. And thank you for your time.
Joe Cohn, final thoughts, closing statement.
I want to thank our sponsors, those of you for tuning in, watching the debate at home, and my opponents for joining me tonight. I'm running for Congress because the country desperately needs more leaders who fight for everyone's rights and not more career politicians, who, let's face it, are not in short supply in Congress or in this race. It's true, I haven't been in office for the last 20 years. Instead, I've been fighting for civil liberties across the country. I'd be the first ever former ACLU lawyer with a vote in Congress. The truth is, we're not sending someone to Trenton where Democrats can just run the show. We're picking someone for Congress where Republicans, whether we like it or not, have some power. I should be your choice because I'm the only candidate in the race who's ever won in legislatures where Republicans have real authority. For example, I've successfully led campaigns to defeat red state bills that would restrict telling women where they could get abortions. In Congress, I'll work tirelessly to rebuild faith in our democracy and in our government. I'll do it by building a coalition of the reasonable to address everyday affordability issues like lowering the cost of prescription drugs, capping out-of-pocket medical expenses, fixing Social Security, getting the wealthiest among us to pay their fair share so we can fund universal pre-K, and tackling the student debt with a plan that can garner bipartisan support. I'll do everything I can to find ways to work together because we need to if we're going to save our democracy. I hope you'll join me in this fight for America's future by signing up at joecohnforcongress.com, and I hope to have your vote on June 4th. I promise that I'll work my hardest to make you proud of that vote. Thank you so much.
And thank you all. That concludes New Jersey Debate Night. I would like to thank the candidates, Carol Murphy, Herb Conaway, and Joe Cohn for their time and responses. Thank you to our panelists, David Wildstein, Micah Rasmussen, and Joey Fox. Thank you also to the New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University for producing this debate. Thanks to C-SPAN for airing the debate and to NJ-3 for sponsoring this debate. We invite you to stay tuned because immediately following this debate, we're going to have a conversation with some of our panelists and talk more about this and get their reactions and insight. I'm Laura Jones. Remember, primary election day in New Jersey is June 4th, so head on over to ONNJ.com if you'd like to see the debate again. We thank you so much for watching. thanks for staying with us in this post-debate conversation. I'm Laura Jones, and we just heard from the Democratic candidates in New Jersey's 3rd Congressional District who are running for the open seat of Andy Kim, who is running for U.S. Senate. We have 3 of the 5 candidates running this evening: Civil Rights Attorney Joe Cohn, Assemblyman Conaway, and Assemblywoman Carol Murphy. Now I'm going to bring back some of our panel members for analysis, and including that will be David Wildstein and Joey Fox from the New Jersey Globe. David, Joey, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for participating in this debate. And wanted just to kind of get a little bit of your reaction and response to this debate. If we have Joey and David. Do we have Joey and David? There we go. There we go. Hey, guys.
Hi.
We had just a few technical little glitches there, but overall, Joey, we were able to cover a lot of ground with the 3 candidates running. So, Joey, what did you think stood out to you most?
So this is a race that I think has not drawn a ton of outside attention. This is definitely not a super high profile race the way that, Andy Kim versus Tammy Murphy was when that race was going on, or the way that we had a debate recently with Rob Menendez versus Ravi Bala. That's definitely drawn a lot of outside attention. This is a race that's going on a little bit under the radar. And I think that this debate was a chance for these 3 candidates to try to break out a little bit, to try to prove, I may not be in the national spotlight yet, but one of us is probably going to end up going to Congress. I don't know if we necessarily saw anyone specifically break out during this debate. I don't know if we necessarily saw any specific policy issues. There were a couple of disagreements that came out, but I don't think we saw anything that felt like it was the defining difference of the race. I think this will ultimately be will remain relatively low profile to the end, will remain relatively low stakes to the end. Any of these candidates who might win would probably vote and behave decently similarly in Congress.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really about who the voters, when they look at these choices, who they like the most, who they think would be the most effective.
Yeah. David, people who follow politics in New Jersey, they know these names, but for the audience, a lot of people don't know the names. But as far as this race goes, as far as all the congressional primaries, would you say that this is one of the more competitive races?
And this is a race that perhaps more than any in the state was completely reset by a federal judge's decision to get rid of organization lines and go to office block voting. I don't know who's going to win here, and I definitely agree with Joey. I think you probably saw the next member of Congress from the 3rd district in this debate tonight. This district is fairly strongly leaning toward the Democrats, but these are all some very different candidates, and 2 of them have served in the legislature. They've served at various capacities, and you saw a new guy tonight, Joe Cohn. People who may not have seen him before, and he comes out of sort of a different mold, which is what he was saying, an ACLU lawyer seeking to start a political career in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and David, one of the things I want to follow up on this, people stayed in for the whole debate, we mentioned at the top, is there are actually 5 candidates running. We had 3 who were a little more active, more aggressive in their campaigns. Can you just talk about the entire field and also why we chose 3 as opposed to all 5? Given the time constraints as well, we had only an hour to be able to introduce the audience to the candidates and get to substantive content.
As you know, Laura, it's so hard to make a decision about where the cutoff is, and debates flow differently when you have a huge number of people sharing a platform. They're all after a while it all sort of gets befuddled, and it's more of a forum than a debate. So we had to make a call, which is who are the 3 candidates that we thought had the clearest path to a win. It's not easy. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and maybe we didn't put the winner of this primary up there, and that would be entirely on me if that's the case. But I think when you look at Sarah Schoengold and when you look at Brian Schieber, there are a lot of paths to political careers that begin with running for Congress, and I don't mean to dismiss them outright, but I always go back to the modern day role model here, which is Andrew Zwicker, who ran for Congress, didn't do really well at all in a primary with Bonnie Watson Coleman and Linda Greenstein and Upendra Chivakula, but he impressed a lot of people on the campaign trail, and that enabled him to go to the state assembly by a real, I think it was 78 vote margin. Now he's a state senator. Now he's a rock star in the legislature. So it's important to know in these races, sometimes people run, they don't do well, and you never hear from them again. It's too late at night for me to make Joey and you listen to go through a list of 50 years worth of congressional candidates that finish with 1 or 2% of the vote. But sometimes they click. Sometimes they move on. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to get there. So we'll see. We'll see what the voters decide to do.
Yeah, I don't know, David. I've been known to kind of go on and on about, all things New Jersey politics. I'm a political junkie that way. But to both of you, Herb Conaway, Carol Murphy, they are current members of the state assembly, work together. Did anything strike you about how they get along together in Trenton as opposed to how they're getting along in this debate? Some people, when you're in a primary, Democrats running against Democrats, it'll get really nasty, really, really heated. I didn't really see that level of animosity, and you certainly don't see it in Trenton. Either of you care to chime in on that one and that dynamic?
Well, one thing I'll quickly say, I believe I did a search for a story a couple months ago to see if I could find a single bill that had come up on the assembly floor where the two had voted differently. And I don't believe I could find one for going back several years.
Wow.
New Jersey is odd because each legislative district elects 3 people. It's 1 state senator and 2 members of the assembly per district, all representing the same constituents. And Assemblyman Conaway and Assemblywoman Murphy represent the same district. So they've got the same constituents. That kind of makes them these sort of legislative twins, to maybe use an awkward term. And clearly they've got respect for each other. They're not necessarily best friends, but they're not the type of people who will really sling a crazy amount of mud at each other. I think that you're not going to see any wild attack ads going down in the last month of this primary. That's not really the vibe here. These are, the 2 of them are 2 people. The overall field is 5 people, all of whom are mostly running for Congress on their own merits, on their own records. And they'll live and die by that rather than by any kind of crazy expose against their opponent or attack on one of their opponents.
Right. And, David, when we go back to September, before the indictment of Senator Bob Menendez, that's what started everything in motion. When Andy Kim decided he was going to run for this seat is now open. I don't know if Herb Conaway, Carol Murphy, Joe Cohn, the other candidates, I don't know if any of them had intents ahead of time of even challenging Andy Kim had this not happened to Bob Menendez and Andy Kim was staying in that seat in Congress. Your thoughts?
No, they were. They certainly loyal as both 3 and enthusiastic supporters of him. If Andy Kim had decided he was going to stay in Congress for 40 years instead of maybe going to the U.S. Senate for 40 years, there would never have been a race to the seat, and I don't think he would have faced any kind of primary. So this is what happens. This is the butterfly effect of politics. Is one thing happens, we've taken to almost joke about it sometimes to the point where maybe I shouldn't joke about it, which is Nadine Menendez wanted a new Mercedes and now the line is gone. Right. What you've seen is a substantially altered political landscape in New Jersey, perhaps a forever altered one. And it's all because a couple things set in motion changes in other people's lives. And, remember once, if Carol Murphy or Herb Conaway win this election, well, then there's going to be a new assembly member in the 7th district. There's going to be a place for somebody to move up. And you think about that whole chain effect of, a county commissioner becomes an assembly member, mayor becomes a county commission member, and a councilman moves up. The next thing you know, you're out looking for a new recreation commission member. So that's how people's lives are affected, almost accidentally, by events that trigger changes in the political landscape.
Before we close out this post-show conversation, David, we've been holding a number of debates. This is not our last debate. We've got another one coming up. So can you just tell our viewers a little bit more of what they can expect? We've got the primary coming up on June 4th, but we're busy behind the scenes planning some other shows, other debates beyond that as well.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, that's one of the great. It depends upon what vantage point you want to take this from. One of the things I love about New Jersey is it never stops. Election day never stops. Today is election day in New Jersey. 15 towns are electing members to the local governing bodies. We have fire commissioner races. So we're going to do a debate in the 10th district. We don't have the date yet. We're going to invite the candidates. That's a special primary for Donald Payne's seat. There's 11 Democrats running, so we're all going to have to get together to figure out how we want to do this, and how we want to have a field of 11 possibly be represented. And then next week, Curtis Bashaw, a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, who didn't join us in his debate, he's going to come on not for a debate, but just for an interview with the three of us so that we can have a chance to ask him questions about where he stands in advance of the June 4th primary. And then it's on to November, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah, a week can be a lifetime in politics, that's for sure. Joey, David, thank you so much for sticking around after the show, after the debate, to speak with us. And we thank all of you so much for joining us. If you would like to see the debate again, you could head over to ONNJ.com. And once again, we thank our panelists, David Wildstein, Micah Rasmussen, who had to drop off a little earlier, Joey Fox, as well as to our sponsors on New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.